Okay, so welcome back to the saga of stuff that happens in Chult. It's horrible stuff that all happens because of you.
Chult.
At this part, they are deep into the jungle, and there's this goblin settlement called Yellow Yark. It has a little secret in it that I'll dispose later. If you are, I think, leading this campaign, your players aren't supposed to know this, but I didn't care because I thought it was really funny, and I wanted something to happen, and it did, and now I'm mad that it did, but that's why we're on camera right now. Colton's character had vanished, and I was trying to find some way to bring him back into the story.
It was a classic, Colton hadn't been there for the game, so now we're, deep into the jungle, so you had to find a creative way to bring him back, essentially. My character is a dwarf barbarian named Flint. I'm traveling with Spencer, who is playing a halfling cleric, and we're also playing with Logan's cousin named Paul. Paul is playing a tiefling...
Wizard.
Wizard.
Sorcerer.
And that's the three of us. And Colton's playing a drow warlock. So those are our four characters. And going through the jungle, we have come across Artist Cimber and Dragonbait, who, if you guys don't know who those are.
Basically, the Tomb of Annihilation, there are 200 NPCs that the game just says, here, give them to your party. They all are really cool guys, and they belong in your party. So as a DM, you get to take care of 20 of them.
Try running out of the abyss.
Oh yeah, it's just the same. Oh man, you start out with
with 12.
And then they dissipate, but in this one they just accumulate and stack and stack. So
we've got Artist Cimber, we've got Dragonbait, we've also got this were-tiger lady, and we've also got some guy back from the village named Taban with us.
Taban is this huge gladiator.
Azaka tells us there is a little obstacle in the way, and it's called Yellow Yark. And we're like, what's Yellow Yark? And she's like, well, it's a goblin encampment that can move. And we're like,
it's a little...
It can move.
All that she says is that, she's seen it somewhere else in the jungle, but she knows it's here now, and she doesn't really know how it does that. And Artist Cimber and Dragonbait have found a way into the area.
So we push through, and we decide that we're going to dress up as goblins in order to get into Yellow Yark. And so we're like, okay, sure. And then we'll just sneak through, and we'll get out, and we'll be fine.
They all wear these little wooden masks that make them look like ants, so everyone just kind of got a hold of those. And they make it into Yellow Yark, and there's a little prison on the side of their little village. And in that prison...
It's Colton's character, yeah. And so we're like, we have to get her out somehow. And I'm like, all right. So I'm trying to think.
She says basically that all her equipment is missing. And she can Misty Step out just fine. But she doesn't want to take all of them on at once. So
I start moving along through the goblin encampment. And there's some goblins who are just like, hey, what are you doing here? And I'm like, They go over to the cell. And they're like... Well, it's Jim Bob's birthday, and he gets to poke the prisoner, and I was like
a little stick.
Well, Jim Bob, I made you cake in that room over there. And he's like, sweet! And there was no cake.
The Queen's hut.
So I go over to the hut with Garrett, and we go over to the back, and I look inside, and I'm like, okay, Sariel's stuff is in there. So I gotta find a way to get it somehow. There's the queen and there's a bunch of dudes in here.
And at this point, they notice looking around that Yellow Yark, spoilers, there is a giant tree arced over the top of the whole area, and there are ropes going down, and it's all really tied tight by one rope at the base of the tree. And you can deduce from this that if you cut that rope, the whole village goes flying over the jungle.
It's like it goes up on this tree, and the tree just would fling it, and it's oh, this is how it moves. It's because it's so that if anything comes by to the village, they can chuck it, and then they can go find their village later with all their things. Like
if they saw a T-Rex coming, they'd hack that line, and then they'd all kind of migrate over to where the village ended up.
So Flint sees this, and he's just like, the math through his dumb brain. He's like, okay. So, I look inside the tent, I look back down. I look over to Garrett, and I say, hey, take one of my hand axes. And Spencer's like, okay. And I say, go over to that rope, and when I yell, Cheeto, cut the rope. And he's like, okay. So I take my other hand axe, and I look inside again, and I cut a hole in the wall. I jump through, I run over, I go to the chest with his stuff, and I look over, and there's a bunch of goblins around me, and I take the chest, I cut a perfect circle in it, and I stand on top of the chest and I say, Gino! And the village goes, well, except for me on top of the chest, where I cut a hole.
So they brought 4 NPCs, Paul's character, like everyone that was here. So we have Colton's character, the chest, Flint, Garrett who cut the rope, Dragonbait. Everyone else is about 2 miles away.
Oh, I saved Sariel's stuff though, so that was good, and we got rid of all the goblins.
There were like 40 goblins in there, and they all died. And the way that they found the city and their friends again is because Paul's sorcerer set the whole thing on fire.
It's just like...
So Azaka, their guide who wasn't there, was like, would you like to tell me about that pillar of smoke a mile away? And you're like,
nope.
That's where they are.
Exactly. And that's how...
you ruined the game again.
I launched a goblin encampment and killed a bunch of people.